Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order, the Madison Board of Selectmen on February 11th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. Please join me in saluting the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show all selectmen are present. Consent agenda, warrant dated number 19, 1/28/19, number 20, 1/28/19, payroll register dated number 5, 1/31/19, and number 6, 2/7/19.
Move to accept. Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the warrant and payroll register as read. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Acceptance of the meeting minutes of January 29, 2019.
Move to accept. Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes of January 29, 2019. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Old business, Mr. Moody?
None for me,
Mr. Elias?
None for me.
Mr. Savage? Mr. Duchamp? None for me. Items of communication, Mr. Town Manager?
Well, here's the good news, bad news. The good news is that the State Board of Property Tax Review is going to meet this Friday. The bad news is the Madison paper abatement is not on their agenda. So we hope that at this meeting, they will set a date to discuss and make a final decision on the Madison paper abatement. So we're inching closer to this
Would you
deadline.
project that a month out?
Boy, I would hope it'll be 30 days or less.
30 days or less.
Maybe 2 weeks if we're lucky. The Anson-Madison Sanitary District has asked to use this room for a public hearing on the 27th of February, so at the end of the month, 6 o'clock. It's going to take comments on a proposed rate increase. I talked to Dale Clark this week, and apparently the idea of going with a standard monthly rate was voted down by the Sanitary District Board, and so they're going to do a slight rate increase. Last I heard, they were talking less than 5%, somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't know if you know any different, Mr. Elias. Does that sound right? No.
They're gonna raise the base.
Okay. So that'll be on February 27th, right here in this room at 6 o'clock. Before you, I printed out, or actually Kathy printed out the list of pending foreclosures. It's down to about 30-some properties at this time. Many of these folks we anticipate to come in and pay prior to the deadline, which is this coming Tuesday. Monday, the office is closed for President's Day. Tuesday till 4 o'clock, or a payment that is postmarked by Tuesday, the 19th, will be accepted after that. Then the properties will be foreclosed on, and then it turns to you, the Board of Selectmen, as how to work with these. What Kathy and I are seeing right now is probably we'll see about 3 or 4 properties where people aren't able to make that foreclosure payment. So we'll be talking about that probably at the next Select Board meeting. The only other thing I wanted to pass along to you, just to get some guidance from you, I got a call from Fabian Oil. They're based out of Oakland area. They recently purchased Kelly Petroleum out of Skowhegan. So now Fabian is serving customers in the Madison-Skowhegan area. They asked if they could bid on heating oil prices for the municipality. We haven't gone out to bid on heating oil in 4 years. I didn't know if that was something that the board wanted to do. According to our policies, it says that we may go out to bid for services like this. It doesn't require that we do it every 3 years. But I just wanted to take the temperature of the board, see what they thought about that.
Mr. Moody?
Who are we using right now?
Bob's Cash Fuel.
Has there ever been a time that places like C.M. Brown or any of them others have gone into a bid process with the town?
When we did it 4 years ago, we got bids from Bob's, Polar Bear Oil, C&N Brown, and Irving, and Bob's was the most competitive across the board. One of the things we did 4 years ago was we went out for heating oil and for diesel. The diesel's really complicated, especially during the wintertime, because Bob takes some complementary steps to make sure that our guys always have fuel at the town office, and not everybody's able to offer that same type of service that they are. So if we were going to do something, I would recommend just do the heating oil bit.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on, that, you know, Bob's, we have that small not portable, but that small above ground tank, it's 1,000 gallons, and, you know, last week, for example, we went through 900 gallons. And they do come up, and one of the drivers does keep a good check on it to make sure we have plenty for, you know, the up and coming weekend or a storm.
So I thought I would bring it up, see if the board wanted to do that for this budget season, to do it for a future budget season, and, or to see what the thought was.
Any comments? Mr. Lice?
Just a question, didn't we used to do that with the school?
Again, we tried that 4 years ago, and we really couldn't coordinate.
I'm not talking about fuel, I'm talking about heating oil.
Right, the heating oil, we used to try to do a combined bid in. I haven't reached out to the school to see where they are in that process.
I think this comes from Bob's too, doesn't it?
I believe it does.
I mean, I think it's probably all figured in like that. That's a tough call. I don't have a problem staying the way we're going, and I don't have a problem getting bids, so. I guess I'll let you make that call, Mr. Town Manager.
Okay.
I mean, is that reasonable? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough call, because obviously, we have good service, and we have a person in town, but you do have to look out for, you know, the price and all that stuff.
The other thing is if you put it out to bid, you have a certain obligation to take the lowest bid by
Right.
virtue of the way the bylaws are written, particularly on larger purchases like that.
Right.
So,
I think for Bob's, that, the idea of putting the diesel up to bid would go better for them, because it would be something they could keep. I mean, nobody's gonna do what they're doing, because
Right.
that's their tank, isn't it?
No,
Is that ours? Ours? No, I mean, they might not do it that way, but I think that's up to you.
Okay, I'll report back.
Are we okay on that?
yeah.
Is that it?
That's all I have.
Okay, new business, department head reports. We have Donnie's in here.
Yes, the fire report
He's
should
out,
have
he's on
been
call, I guess, right now.
The fire report should have been on your desk. The only thing Don wanted me to just touch on in this is, it's typical this time of year because our inspections run out on all the fire trucks that have to be inspected, just like your other motor vehicles. And it wasn't too much of breaking the bank, but you can kind of see some of these older engines and the rescue needing things like tie rod ends. The rescue vehicle, which is actually owned by the Anson Madison Starks ambulance service, it's housed in Madison, but that needs a fuel tank strap that holds the fuel tank in. There's not many out there. In fact, Donnie says they found one in a nationwide search. If they can't get that one, they're gonna have to retrofit the fuel tank in that vehicle. So he wanted to pass that information along to you.
All right, Jeff?
Yeah, well, as you guys know, it's been pretty challenging the last couple of weeks with all the storms we've had, and we've had 24 weather events since the end of October. And 11 of those have either started or finished and/or were all rain below freezing. I know I've had a few concerns about, some complaints about some roads that have iced over, some rough roads. Just keep in mind that it takes X amount of hours to get around our routes. And some of the in-town streets don't get our last on the list. We keep our primary roads and higher speed roads, pay more attention to those and keep those more cleaned off. As of right now, by the end of this week, there'll be 1,000 ton of salt in the shed. The last 3 years, we've used an average of 700 ton by this time, so we're already 300 ton over. And we've gone through pretty near 2,000 yards of sand, and our normal average use for a winter is 1,500 to 1,600 yards of sand, and we still have 6 weeks to go.
Awesome. So, Mr. Moody?
Are you able to get more salt?
Yeah, no, we've been keeping the shed full, and there's not a problem with that as of yet.
Yeah, the overall salt demand is not, every once in a while, depending on who the contractor was, there'd always be issues of getting salt into the port and so forth, but I guess getting the salt hasn't been an issue this year.
Well, what happened this year was the contractor was Morton Salt, and they had a pile that was sitting down over the Sears Port for 2 or 3 years. They couldn't get rid of it, so they dropped the price on it. And they're they're moving that now along with another ship that had came in the first of the year. So last year, a year before, there was a problem, that was a ship that couldn't get in, and there was a shortage of it, but as of right now, things are looking okay.
I knew there was one year that,
Yeah, it was last year, it was the year before, I believe, it was 2016.
yeah,
The price was weird.
you're getting it too.
I'm getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what's been taking place at the highway. We have, we had a few major breakdowns in the last week or so, but nothing that's not getting fixed and be ready to go for the next storm, which is tomorrow, and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I just,
Tell Peter he missed. All he got was my paper box. He missed the mailbox, but he got the paper box.
I'm not jinxing, I'm not saying a word.
I've talked with Jeff about this before the meeting, and I wanted to bring it up so that it could be kind of a public discussion, because I think this winter has been wearing on some of our residents, and they don't understand why some of the roads that don't get the traffic still have those large chunks of ice. So that's why Jeff and I did a little research on the salt, because we were getting calls where people were wondering, are we using less salt this year? Is that why the ice won't come off the road? And it's just, it's really just physics. When that ice bonds to the road and it's 20 below zero, it takes, days.
Well, that, we're not getting the temperatures, and,
Right.
and going back to, 1997 or 8, whenever the ice storm was, that's what this was compared to. I've been working for the highway department now for 23, 24 years, and this is about the second worst winter that I can remember, as far as the rain and the ice.
Yeah.
Just the way the storms have come with the.
And there's the weird timing, the hours of the day, and the temperatures. I mean, that rain we had a couple weeks ago, it was 28 degrees, we had an inch and a half of rain.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Anything from code enforcement?
Well, the only thing I put in your packet was just another draft of the fee schedule that Susan's working on with the planning board. What we've tried to do is get pretty much all the fees that should be public knowledge onto one sheet of paper, front and back. So they're still working on this. Susan's also doing some work on site review projects with the Woodlands Senior Living Center. So that track is going on with the planning board. They're actually gonna meet and start the site review process tomorrow night. So,
All right, that sounds good.
staying busy.
See you, John?
Did, the Preble Avenue people, did they get with her about certificate of occupancy?
On Schuster Road, Preble Avenue?
Yeah.
I know that they have been talking with her. They had one approval from the fire marshal's office. I believe the owners of the building thought that's all that they needed, but Susan believes that they needed more than that. Now I didn't talk with her today, that was where we kind of left things last Thursday.
Because I had talked to them last week sometime, and they said that they were working with her and they expected an approval. Because I think everything's ready, they're ready to start renting rooms, they just need her blessing, so.
Well, I think she's going to give them the guidance that comes directly from the state fire marshal. So I don't think there's anything in our code that would hold that up. She just wants to make sure that everything's done according to the fire marshal.
All right. Number 2, discuss community service requests.
So in your packet, there's a listing of community services, and I wanted to try to touch on a couple things that may come up as we're going through the budget season. As you recall, at the last board meeting, you heard quite a bit from the food cupboard, which is one of the largest community services that we fund. This list kind of shows you where community services were funded back in 2015, where they're funded at now, and some recommended amounts. One of the things I've been talking with folks about is changing our budgeting for the tree warden. Going back historically, we've had an individual that served as a tree warden that oversaw certain things about trees in the right of way, but also oversaw purchasing and planting of new trees. We've kind of moved away from that. The tree warden duties, when Keith Blackwell couldn't serve anymore, were transferred over to Glenn as road commissioner, and so they've always stayed in that road commissioner purview. instead of having a separate line item for tree warden, I thought to eliminate that and just basically move those funds over into the TIF account that the highway department has to handle some of the right-of-way issues. I don't know, unless this board sees differently, I don't know if we ever will go back to a tree warden that actually oversaw the purchase and planting of trees, although the highway department could do that on a case-by-case basis. But really, the focus of what we spent this money on over the years is removing trees from the right-of-way. And if a individual has a tree that they're concerned about on their property, that's when Jeff and sometimes Calvin from MEW would get involved and try to work something out. So my recommendation here is to remove that 3,000, and if you remember back in 2015, all of these community services in that top box there were reduced in their funding by a certain amount. They went down from, like, the Sea Cadets from 1,000 to 950. I would recommend that maybe we work toward restoring those numbers to what they were prior to the loss evaluation from Madison paper. So my recommended amounts there are over on the far right-hand side for each of those community services. The Snowmobile Club, I've checked that over the years. Basically, that's a pass-through. We get about $1,900 from the state for those registrations that's supposed to go to a local club. So that's a simple pass-through that goes there. The Lake Association, they use that money primarily to fund their inspection system at the boat landing to keep out invasive species. The American Legion, that's $600. They use to purchase the flags that they put up at the cemeteries during Memorial Day. You know about the food cupboard. The recycling committee, we've used that money primarily to pay for hazardous waste take-back days, our participation in those. And over the last couple of years, we've had to increase what we raise for taxation for Channel 11 because our franchise fees do not cover all of our portion of the budget. And that will probably continue to go that direction. So I just wanted to see if the board had any questions on those community services.
So, in the tree warden area, have we in the past purchased trees and planted? I mean, is that something that we're gonna lose? Should we still be checking into that? I mean,
I don't know this from my experience, but I recall probably one of the last times was when Joy Heichel was here and she worked with Keith and they did the fruit trees down at Pine Street.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
I can remember in the past, Leo Demchak being the tree warden and him purchasing trees to go somewhere.
Back before that, Richard Bartlett.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if that's something we should look into, I mean, is that our responsibility?
Where do they plant the trees?
I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, I mean, if the town's gonna purchase trees, you obviously don't wanna put them in the right of way, because then you could be cutting them down another 40, 50
Well,
years.
That's right.
So then they would go on private properties.
In the past, that's what happened though.
Exactly. that's
No, in the
exactly-
past, you had to plant them in the road right away.
Yeah,
Because they were town trees, they wanted them on town land.
exactly.
So maybe we're just as well not to plant these, not.
Well, I know we planted a couple trees with your help up at the park and playground.
Yeah,
So that doesn't bother anybody and
I don't
as long as they
recall-
survive.
I think Glenn was a tree warden for 3 years, possibly 4 maybe, when Leo got done. And I don't recall purchasing any trees to put alongside the road anywhere in town for that purpose.
Nobody's calling for them, so I guess we do it wise.
Up on your end of town, it'd be pretty hard to plant a tree on your property in front of your house, isn't it? Your house is pretty close to the road right away, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, most all houses up there.
Yeah, so, yeah, if we're gonna do that, you're right, we're gonna be tearing them down again in 40, 50 years, 60 years.
Well, we won't see that one, George.
Yeah, I know, I know.
That's like, Tim had mentioned.
4 or 5.
The majority of that money is going down to taking trees down, and a lot of those trees take anywhere from $600 to $1,000 to get on the ground if we have to hire it done. Some of them the highway takes down, because we can, there's no wires involved. MEW has worked with us in the past to take a lot of them down that weren't necessarily in their right of way, but they worked when we worked together with them, so.
There's still a few on Maple Street. Maple Street.
Yeah, there's a few on Maple Street, there's a big one on the River Road.
Yeah, I guess it is.
There's one on Thomas Street too.
Thomas Street.
Right across the, everything.
Yeah,
Right in the
they're
corner.
everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
It goes right across the road, I believe. All right, any other questions on those? You wanna talk about these in the bottom, or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've always kind of tried to figure out what's the difference between a community service and a service organization. And I guess a community service maybe kind of has a private board and they're kind of based in our community. The service organizations are usually based outside of our community and they serve a wide area like the whole state and they ask for funding. So I created this list. This list includes everybody that we used to fund and everybody that asked for money this year. And so that's about total about 22 different agencies. The ones that are highlighted in the middle there, or bold in the middle, those are the ones that are currently being funded. That's Hospice Volunteers, the Kennebec Valley Transportation Van, which is called the Somerset Explorer, the Madison Anson Senior Citizens, $100 for Somerset Economic Development, Somerset Humane Society, their fee changes based on population, and Spectrum Generations, which we used to fund years ago. They came off of our funding and then they came back on our funding 2 years ago. Spectrum Generations is one of the very few people that actually send somebody out to talk to us. A lot of these agencies just send letters and they don't have anybody to talk to us, which is why they've kind of fallen off our funding. I'm not making any recommendations to take anybody back. In this case, I would make recommendations that we continue to support the agencies that we have been for the last couple of years.
So we didn't do anything with the airport last year?
In Norwalk?
Yeah.
No. No, we haven't funded the Norwalk Airport since
They're
2015.
not even asking.
Right, I know we haven't got a letter from them. Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Okay,
Ton of federal money out there.
thank you.
They got all kinds of.
Any other questions on those? Okay, all right. Number 3, discuss waste management costs.
So in your packets, I had put a summary of my sit-down with Jeff McGowan last week, who oversees Waste Management's Norwalk operations. And we kind of finally got our head around the cost of recycling. It used to be the town paid $25 a ton for the recycling that was processed over in Norwalk. Well, that's gone up to $40 a ton, and Jeff explained to me that's just their transportation fee to haul all the single stream recycling from Norwalk down to Portland to EcoMaine. Then EcoMaine charges them another $45 a ton because they've got to unsort the single stream, they have to actually sort out the single stream recycling. And then on top of that, if there's a contamination fee, it's on a sliding scale. So far this fiscal year, we've paid about $85 a ton for recycling. So we only recycle about 50 tons of material a year. But that 50 tons used to cost us about $1,200. Now it's going to cost us between $400 and $4,500. So again, of the $200 and some thousand we spend with waste management, it really isn't a huge impact, but it is one of the fastest rising costs with waste management is the cost of recycling. It's still something that people feel strongly about, but it's definitely not something that is a small cost to the municipalities. Jeff explained to me that the waste management landfill has gotten some approvals to operate what they call Phase 9, which will be opening up a new section of acreage over in Norwalk that they can use as a landfill. So they've gotten some of the preliminary approvals from the state. Now they're in the public benefit phase. So most of their negotiations deal specifically with the town of Norwalk, but they also work in things that are supposed to be for the public benefit of all the surrounding municipalities. One of the things he told me is that a new transfer station is in the works. So the one that's on Airport Road right now, that will be closed and they will build a brand new transfer station somewhere else in that vicinity on Airport Road. One of the things he told me was they're considering, it's not in stone yet, but they're considering building a scale house on that new transfer station, which would try to help get a more accurate count of, all right, if a truck comes in from Norwich Walk, if a truck comes in from Smithfield, if a truck comes in from Madison, they weigh in, they weigh out. So they're, people that are keeping track of that have an idea of how much waste comes from each town in that back gate. So that's a possibility. So we'll keep an
So
eye on
wait,
that.
each individual person that goes there, each car that goes in?
Basically, right now, you wait in line to get in.
Right.
So this system would be based on really, I don't know if the board recalls, when we looked at a lot of other transfer stations, when the town was considering one of their own, there was a lot of nice, well-organized facilities out there, and I think they're trying to model this after that, so. They plan to offer a hazardous waste take-back day at no charges to the community. We do that on the first Saturday of every October. We participate with KB Cog, and we do it at the Skowhegan Transfer Station. So you can take back your oils, your paints, asbestos, that sort of thing. But we have to pay into that, so it costs the town about $1,000 to participate in that. This would be a take-back day at the Norwich Walk facility that they would pay for, so no cost to the town. And I asked him about towns that pay the front gate tipping fees. He says it's kind of an anomaly to this area. Skowhegan, Madison, Anson, Canaan, and Smithfield are the 5 towns that pay for commercial haulers to go across the front scales in those tipping fees. So I thought that was fairly decent information. Based on estimates from a couple of years ago, there are approximately 700 customer accounts and 100 business accounts in Madison. And that's split up between 6 different haulers, like Somerset, Waste Management, Gregory's, Bolsters, that sort of thing. So, the only other thing I'll pass along to you that I put in this little summary is just to remind you that we've kind of been operating without a recycling committee. Most of the people that participate in the recycling committee have lost interest and just kind of moved away from it. So by ordinance, we're supposed to have a recycling committee that advises the board, but we really don't have one at this time. And I've tried to reach out to people, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of interest in it, unfortunately. So I don't know what, if anything, the board wants to do about that.
I'd say just keep trying, I mean, that's all we can do.
You're really gonna need to find somebody that it's their passion. And
Right.
a lot of people recycle, but it's hard to find somebody that's really done the whole
That's
thing.
new, Sean.
Should we have a conversation about front gate tipping fees? I mean, what's that cost the taxpayer?
So when you break down our waste management costs, we spend about $115,000 on front gate tipping fees. That's what the taxpayer pays for the front gate. We pay about $85,000 to $100,000 for the back gate. So,
I know we've often had a conversation about the front gate tipping fees, and with the information that this is an anomaly in this area. I mean, it's kind of like, we've argued with ourselves, is this an economic development thing? Well, if we're paying front gate tipping fees as a economic development, then why aren't we taking that money out of economic development? And that kind of thing, but it's truly an anomaly throughout the waste management system, then I'm wondering if maybe that's something that, we gotta have a conversation, if we can save $100,000,
Jeff McGowan said, I said, what's the history on this? He said, these same 5 towns have been doing it since before he got there. So he doesn't know when it started and why it started, and is it one of those situations where, well, if one town does it, then the other towns will have to follow, or he really didn't have much insight other than the fact that it is different. In most other municipalities in Maine, the tipping fee is negotiated between the hauler and Waste Management, or whoever the landfill operator is. And then they, in turn, negotiate a price with their customer base. And he was telling me some of the haulers have gotten to the point where they have scales on the front of their machines, so they know that your 4-yard dumpster, on average, carries about 100 pounds worth of stuff. But maybe the neighbor's 4-yard dumpster, maybe it carries about 300 pounds of stuff. So they're able to figure out those individual costs to the individual customers.
some of the individual haulers don't, when they go through the front gate, they just pay the tipping fees.
Some of the individual haulers pay their own tipping fees, right?
Bolsters pays their own.
Right?
So Bolsters, if Bolsters picks up trash in Madison, they just pay the tipping fees,
They did for many years.
you know, at least, you know, and they're one of several that, you know, so they do that because they don't wanna have to say, okay, well, this truck just went to
Right.
Madison, or this truck just went.
It picked up in Solon, it picked up
Yeah.
in Bingham, it picked up in Athens, and all of that.
So I guess my question would be, if we're going to not do that for the front gate, I'm not opposed to that. Are we gonna have to close the back gate too? Because we're gonna pick up the tipping fee for the back gate. Right?
Well, your options are you could close, you could stop paying the tipping fee for the front gate alone, or stop paying it for the back gate as well as the front gate.
Right, but then that isn't fair to the, if we're paying it for the back gate, that's not fair to the people who have their garbage taken, garbage or trash. Right? I wanna make sure-
Trash,
solid waste taken picked up by Somerset and taken to there, right? So they have to pay Somerset for their tipping fee. Right? I take my truck and I drive to the back gate, I just throw it in and the town picks it up. I
Right.
mean, that's not really fair to both of them, I wouldn't think, right? I mean, that would not fair to either group, is it?
Was it,
I mean,
is it fair to the guy that takes his own stuff that you have Somerset pick up yours?
Well, that's a choice I make, but the tipping fee is the same, right? The tipping fee doesn't matter. Either Somerset pays it, or Bolsters, or whoever, or when I go, I pay it in the back gate.
No, when you go, you do not pay in the back.
Well, I'm just saying, if we're gonna do it for the front gate, then I think we gotta consider that for the back gate, which would be very politically, probably very
And I
tough
don't,
for people to, because the number of people that are there on Saturday morning when I go is quite crowded.
and I don't know if Waste Management would even want to enter into that, where one town would have to pay tipping fees at the back gate, because for them it'd be easier if you just say Madison residents aren't allowed.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and I don't, I'm not throwing that out there as anything TV, so don't get too crazy just yet. But I'm just saying though, if we're gonna do one, I think we have to consider doing the other. I mean, I don't think we can be, that's unfair to the people who take their stuff. Yes, Mr. West.
You're gonna find that if you stop paying front gate and you start increasing the cost to these people, you're gonna find more trash on the road. There are people that cannot drive their bag of trash down to the dump, and they're not gonna do it. So is it fair for me to pay a hauler to pick my trash, which I do, and then for me to pay for the back gate, which I am doing through taxation? So I'm getting double whacked.
Well,
So if you take that front gate away from me, and I gotta pay to have it front gate, and I pay for the back gate.
right, but you don't have,
I am
You know
not
what
gonna
you-
drive
what
my
you-
trash, I'm not gonna take a can full of busted up glass, put it in my truck and go down there. It's not gonna happen. I got a dumpster up front, that's why I have a dumpster. Okay, which I pay tax to this town to take care of. Now, I'm also paying for the back gate in tune of $100,000, which I didn't know was that much money. So, what's fair?
I mean, that's something we have to think about. I don't think we're gonna make a decision tonight, but.
So the back gate's 100,000, the front gate's 100,000, is that what you're saying?
Front gate's a little bit higher, it'll run about 115,000.
And what does the tonnage cost between the two? How much a ton in the back gate?
So when you take your stuff to the back gate, they charge you a higher rate. It's about $86 a ton to the back gate, it's $68 a ton to the front.
Case dismissed. Get rid of the back gate.
Good luck.
I know that isn't gonna happen.
That just bolsters the argument that if you get rid of the back gate, you're gonna find that stuff on the side of the road.
And if you increase the front gate, you're gonna find it on the side of the road. I guarantee you that.
I know no one likes to see any increase in the cost of things, but say it costs $115,000 to operate or to pay the tipping fees at the front gate, and say there's 800 business and individuals that have their trash picked up. that's about $150 per person per year. You divide that by 12, it's about $12 a month. So on average, I'm not saying this would happen across the board, but on average, the hauler would have to decide, okay, what do I want to do with my business here? Do I want to eat part of that $12 a month? Or do I want to pass it all along to the customer? One of the things that the recycling committee, when it was functioning, always pointed out is there needs to be some incentive to the commercial hauler to get people to separate their trash and recycle. That's why some, like Three Rivers, offered a pay per bag. So here's my deal with Three Rivers. If I'm gonna just get paid for 3 bags, then there's one rate, and that's all I do. And so I try to get all the stuff I can out of my garbage into recycling, so I just have 3 bags. I don't know if any of the other haulers ever try to incentivize people to send less trash to the landfill. But again, with your recycling ordinance, that's one of the things the town should be trying to do. So by taking the tipping fees away from the commercial haulers, could be seen as a way of incentivizing them to encourage people to send less trash to the landfill.
Question I would have for Jeff McGowan is these people that don't pay for the front gate or the back gate, do they have recycling centers in their town
That's a
that
good
you
question.
drop off stuff? I mean,
That's a
because
good
people like to go to the dump, they like to
Right.
go to the back gate. I mean, you go down there and sit on a Saturday, see how many people drive in from Madison. Drive, you know, it's gonna be a fight to do that.
See, I would never propose that we close the front, the back gate.
Yeah.
But I still don't understand why we pay the tipping fees for the private haulers going through the front gate. I understand your fairness thing, but look at the data. There are 4 towns in the service area, 5 towns in the service area of Waste Management Company. They are a huge company, and there are 5 towns
Okay, so,
that do that. And
so.
so I don't understand that.
That being said, do those towns have a place where I can go drop off?
Well, we know Skowhegan does.
So I mean, you got, so they are offering that, they're offering the back gate in a different form.
Right.
So, I mean, if we wanna do something like that, oh God, I don't wanna bring it up, but we went through this before, and if we wanna try it again, we can look at it again to see where we can create something maybe for less than 100,000, that we can, it's still not fair, but it's something we can create that we have here, that we have a drop-off site. Yes.
This right here that you're talking about tonight is a one-night thing. We could talk about this all night.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, I do think you're right there.
Jack is right, we need to talk about it, but it doesn't need to be tonight, because it's gonna be a long time.
All right, I think before we get the budget, we can talk about it again.
Well, it's $100,000 and
Well, I think it's more than that, I think it's 200,000.
200,000.
I mean, so,
Exactly what it
but
is.
it's gonna be a fight, though. That's not gonna go down pleasantly.
But I remember, one of the things that I remember is when we were having this discussion about picking up the curbside recycling, all of the people that were, we gotta do curbside, we gotta pay for it, oh man, you're gonna explode your tipping fees at the back gate and the front gate, cause everybody's just gonna throw that stuff in the trash. And what have we seen for tonnage increases? Very minuscule. So,
But I mean, you gotta remember that we have lost probably the biggest recycler that we had.
Right.
Stuff like cardboard and things like that, but I mean, I mean, that's all I've heard about this with, people dropping stuff off. I mean, Jeff Lloyd spoke very eloquently here one night about his pit up here and being full of garbage, truckloads of garbage. So I mean, we have seen that, but I think all of these other towns, you'll find out, have some place for people to drop off their trash. They wanna take their one bag and put it in a dumpster, not have Somerset or Bolster or whoever else come and pick their garbage up, because they don't wanna pay for it.
can you check with some of those, I mean, Anson doesn't have anything I know of, do they?
Yeah.
Solon does.
Solon
But
does.
Solon doesn't pay for commercial hauler tipping fees.
They have their own truck and roll-offs,
Right,
yes,
for that transfer station.
yes.
But that doesn't mean that people in Solon can't hire somebody to come pick up their trash.
Correct, but you can take your stuff there on a Saturday, throw it in the dumpster, they haul it down Monday, Tuesday, and that's what you pay when it is in that dumpster, that's the tipping fee for the town of Solon, whether it's 10-ton, 20-ton on that dumpster.
Yeah, but Joe taxpayer is paying that, right?
The taxpayer, yes, the
Because
taxpayer.
you don't pay to drop your bag in the,
No,
right. So Joe taxpayer is still paying the tipping fee,
yes.
because it's a town truck.
All right, we can talk about this again. Alright. Okay, number 4, discuss scheduling special town meeting for Woodlands Senior Living TIF/CEA.
So in your packets, I drafted a special town meeting warrant. And before I get into the details of it, I wanted to give you an update on the work that the lawyers have been doing trying to put together this TIF.
Can I just register one complaint right now? Ron Moody, I don't know if I can deal with that name on that.
Are you saying you'd like to run for constable?
I don't know if I can deal with it.
All right, let's keep moving.
It would keep him out of jail.
So let me see if I
Get you out.
regain my train of thought here. So, when we last left this issue, Matthew Walters was going to go to their attorney, who's drawn up several TIFs. And we were going to have their attorney draw something up and have our attorney, which is Joan Fortin, who works for Bernstein and Shore, look at it. Joan's done TIF work for us in the past. A potential conflict popped up, and in my opinion, I did not think it was much of a conflict. The conflict was not that Bernstein and Shore had done TIF work with Woodlands before, but they had taken Lon Walters, who is Matthew Walters' father, who was also an owner of Woodlands, and they had done some estate work for him separately years ago. So they wanted to make that clear that they did work with him. Lon Walters signed off on a waiver, and I signed off on a waiver, just so that we continue to expedite the process here. As of today, neither of the attorneys were comfortable that they would have everything ready for a February town meeting. So I talked with Matthew Walters today, and I talked with Joan, and everybody seems to be thinking more along the lines of March the 11th. So in that draft, I had it dated February the 25th. I drafted a new one dated March the 11th, which would be essentially 30 days from today. So that's the time frame that we're all in agreement on as far as Woodlands and our attorneys that we're going to shoot for. When you have a TIF discussion at a special town meeting, you're required to have a public hearing prior to. In many cases, people hold the public hearing that night and then just bang the gavel and start the town meeting shortly thereafter. So I would assume that's what we would want to schedule, so we're not trying to schedule 2 nights. In this draft that I put together, there's 2 pages of really just TIF-related legal questions, and we'll have the lawyers look at that. And here's what I thought, if you wanted to do this, this may be an opportunity to take some of the items off of our regular June town meeting that are ready to be discussed at a special town meeting, in particular the ordinances that this board worked on and approved earlier in the year. The animals ordinance, this board has had a public hearing and reviewed the changes and approved that. The appeals board is connected to the animals ordinance, so that had to be altered. And then removing all the fees and all the state information from the sewage disposal ordinance. So what's the board thinking about adding these into a special town meeting? You're going to have voters there, you would promote it and let them know ahead of time. Or would you rather hold and just bring it to the regular town meeting?
Mr. Elias.
Is this stuff that controversial?
Well, the animals was.
The animals
Over the course of
Animals
time.
thing will be.
And I
Well, we
have,
need 50 people, that'll get it.
well, that was the thing, I think,
But you may not have the right.
but I don't know
Yeah, right.
how many people would show up in regards to the changes to the animals ordinance, because we've kept people communicated, as far as I know, fairly well through this process.
But if you go to a special town meeting, with some of these things, then unless you publicize it really well, the people that may have had another option on animals or the appeals board or whatever, are gonna say, why did you do that in a special town meeting? Why didn't you just bring it to a regular town meeting? I think you're better off to just keep the special town meeting clean for the item that you've got to deal with. Because the rest of it you can deal with at the regular meeting and not have to kind of have it feel like something just kind of got slid through because you could get 50 people in a room to raise their hand and say yes. So, that's,
Mr. Moody?
I also have to agree with the special town meeting. You have one item that is being called for, and I would be afraid of taking any impact away from that, or any thought process away from that. Leave these other ordinances with June.
Okay.
That's my feeling.
The only other thing I'll mention is Article 6 in this draft, which according to our financial code, how we're supposed to deal with our finances, when we have an article that's overdraft, we have to ask the voters to appropriate money from undesignated fund balance to cover that overdraft at the next scheduled town meeting, whether it's a special town meeting or an annual town meeting. So this is an overdraft from Waste Management, as a matter of fact, where we budgeted $183,000 and we spent $202,000. So that's why we had to.
and I think that item is perfectly legit
Okay.
because it's just something you gotta do. It's an administrative kind of thing. The other things are really ordinance changes.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good.
I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's.
We can sign that at the next meeting on the 25th.
So actually, you tell me what you want in the town meeting warrant, and you can sign the one for March 11th tonight.
Yep.
But I need a motion to say that you want to deal specifically with the Woodlands TIF and the,
Overdraft article.
Yeah.
I'll make that a motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to send to town meeting on March 11th, 2019, Article 1, which is the Woodlands TIF, and Article 2 now, which is the, shall the town authorize the overspending of $19,569.48 from the amount approved from Article 7, other government at June 12th town meeting 2017. All right, and the approved amount was 183, amount spent was $202,569.48, and the selectmen recommend yes. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. All right, number 5, review, ordinance review, chapter 399, vehicles and traffic parking.
Does everybody have, I've noticed that some of you are sharing, does everybody have this sheet from your packet? Okay, do that one.
Thank you.
Well,
You can look on.
you can share with George, I'm fine. So, that 2-page summary there, and I have copies of the entire thing if you want them. This is something that Road Commissioner, Mr. Elias, myself, and the sheriff have reviewed. I am not saying it is a done document, but it's been worked on enough to bring it to you for discussion. What do you want to do? There's 2 real driving forces with this. One is the fact that the current ordinance is about 20 years old at best. And there were a number of changes that needed to be made just because the names of the roads and maybe the other landmarks they referred to just aren't there anymore. But there's another reason that we wanted to approach this, And that is with the change of our policing to using the sheriff's office. We do not have the policing staff that we used to enforce parking. And many towns are running into this same problem. That you just don't have the manpower to police it like we used to. So this ordinance used to have 30-minute parking in some places, 1 hour parking in some places, 2 hour parking in other places. Some of those things we're recommending that we just remove. And probably the most radical idea is that we remove the fees and the fines. In other words, remove this idea of parking tickets, because we don't have the manpower to enforce them. And I talked with the sheriff, and I talked with the road commissioner and Mr. Elias about moving to the punishment or the fine would be, you get 1 warning when your car is towed, and you are responsible for paying for the tow. And that's similar to what we do when Jeff has to deal with cars that are in the main right-of-way during the wintertime. And he's had to be very active with that this year. I think he's got 2 or 3 that you've towed already this year.
Anyways, yeah.
Yeah. So those kind of the high-level things. But I made this 2-page sheet just to kind of summarize all the changes, because this is an 18-page document. And there's 6 pages of stop signs. You know, it's this kind of stuff that'll make your eyes bleed if you're not careful. So, of course, Mr. Elias would have half a page of stop signs if he had it.
So are you saying, Jeff, that you're having to tow more people because we're not forcing it with the police?
Well, years ago, we had a police department, you know, if the officer on duty saw, obviously the officer knew the ordinance, and if there was a vehicle that was parked in the right-of-way between November 1st and April 1st, he knew enough to either A, leave a warning, or give run the plate and call the owner out of courtesy. And if it became too much of a problem, they just had it towed. So that responsibility has gone back to the highway department and the comm center to take care of the issue. We had one certain individual who just didn't get it. He was towed twice until he finally got it. And there's been, most generally what I've been doing in the course of the winter is leaving, you know, a signed note from myself saying what the ordinance is. 99% of the time it's not there the next morning. So most people are in compliance, or it's somebody from out of town that doesn't know we had an ordinance, so. But, yeah, it's been an issue this winter.
So you become the policeman then?
Well, I don't like towing vehicles because it costs money to get them back, and if somebody has to go to work in the morning, it's unfortunate, but, you know, if you try to give the best warning as you can and the benefit of the doubt,
Still gotta plow.
you still have to clear the right of way, yes.
So that's, I think that's, handling it that way is a great way to do it. I know it's a little bit more on you, but just give them a warning, and if they don't move it, tow them.
Any questions on what the town manager has proposed here, Ron?
Question for you, Jeff. Are you comfortable with this process, or would you rather call the comm center and say, would you send me an officer to take care of this problem?
No, they have been very, very good about it. I call them just for verification and documentation.
Yep.
And say, hey, look, I got a car such and such place, here's the plate number, make, model. Okay, we'll call the record service, or if you wanna call them, go ahead. I do it just so it's on record. So if someone gets up and their vehicle is missing in the morning, they call either the town office or 911. They'll say, well, your vehicle was towed by the highway or the sheriff's
Do you
department.
stand by till a record gets there?
No.
Okay. Don't.
No, and most of the time it's Ray, he's right here in town.
Yeah.
He goes up and grabs it, and he's all set with it, so.
Where does that go?
It goes right to his impound yard.
Right to right?
Yeah, and then the person will call either up to the highway garage or the town office or the comm center to say, hey, where's my vehicle?
All right, any other questions on this? Anything?
I had a question on the front page there, add no parking 50 feet either side of Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, so
How are you gonna enforce that?
if you'd like, I'll just go down through these changes kind of quickly. Some are pretty obvious. Folsom Street is what Nichols Street used to be called.
Yeah.
And so all these references to Folsom Street need to be changed to Nichols Street. There's several references to no parking in front of the SAB office on Weston Avenue, John Street, Thomas Street. That building's not there anymore. There used to be, or there actually still are, the faded signs right now at 152 Main Street, directly across from the Catholic Church, where you couldn't park here during certain times of the week because it conflicted with church services. I think that those signs need to go, and we just don't need to try to enforce that. We have had quite a bit of conversation about trucks on the Dunkin' Donuts side of the road that are too close to the driveway. We talked to the sheriff about it, and he says if there's signage, then he'll enforce it. So if you just have a sign that says, no parking 50 feet from this driveway or something, or no parking from here to the intersection with Dunkin' Donuts, then those trucks know, then they're gonna stop at least there. They can't go any further closer back because it affects the visual of getting out of that drive. So the sheriff has said, if there's signage, he'll enforce it. And he'll make sure that the deputies enforce it.
So it is enforceable, and you've got a mechanism to enforce it?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm cool with it, because it's a pain to get out of there sometimes.
Right.
I mean, if we're removing all the fines and fees, there's no enforcement. I mean, are we gonna tow a tractor trailer and say, get a coffee? I mean, the whole thing don't make sense. We're scrap it all.
Right, yeah.
I mean, scrap it all. There's no enforcement, get rid of it. And put in one paragraph, it's a snow removal issue, it can be towed. I mean, we got all kinds of places we can't park, but we're not gonna tow anyone in any of these spots at 2 o'clock in the afternoon that parked in front of Dunkin' Donuts, I can't imagine.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong.
So
Maybe
by
that's
the
what
time, let's say the sheriff gets there, the driver of the vehicle goes in, gets his coffee or whatever he needs, he's in the vehicle and gone before they even show up. And who's gonna abide by the sign? I mean, if you're driving a trailer truck, for example, then you're gonna end up parking up in front of Maple Crest,
Right.
and the entrance into Maple Crest.
Then they're gonna be hollering because the diesel fumes are coming in.
Well, or the business owner's gonna be squawking because, hey, you're driving my business away here.
I don't know, just looking at what's here, I mean, I don't think anything's gonna get towed except the snow removal things.
Mhm.
And if there's no penalties, why have it?
So what would you recommend for penalties?
I mean, if there's no penalties, people are gonna park there. The only way people are gonna change is if there's penalties. Let's use the snow removal. They'll park there 3 or 4 times till it gets towed, if that's the penalty. It works. But I mean, on typical parking by the church or by Madison Electric or anywhere else, I can't imagine we're gonna go to a point of towing a car.
So the sheriff wants signage. And I would be hesitant to create signage if you didn't have an ordinance to back up the sign.
Enforce it.
So it sounds like what we're saying, you need 3 elements. You need the ordinance, you need signage, and then you need some sort of penalty.
I think so.
Some sort of fine or fee. If you looked at the original ordinance, the language of the fee was kind of convoluted and bordered on ridiculous. How many $5 tickets do you want to write? How many $10 tickets do you want to write? How many $15 tickets do you want to write? So maybe the idea is to come up with something to say on the sign. So if the sign says, no parking from here to the corner, punishable by $50 fine, then the sheriff knows what to do.
I think that's a good.
It makes more sense.
That's a good solution, because if you just say no parking and the guy pulls up and says, hey, I can run in and get my coffee before anybody gets out here, and there's no penalty in law, but if you just publish it that way and say, look, and if you put in this ordinance, if you put language in this ordinance that says, in the case of no parking for safety purposes, the fine will be $50, period. Then you're fine.
And, Tim, I have to agree with the sheriff when he says, you sign it, he'll enforce it. And I think if you pull up in front of a sign and it says no parking, and he pull up in front of the next sign that says no parking, $1,100 fine, plus towing. That would get my attention more than just no parking, because no parking means somebody might come up and say, I'm gonna have to move it. But if I'm parked by a sign that says, once I park here and leave this vehicle, it could cost me X number of dollars. And the sheriff is right when he says, you know, you signed it, and that's the key to his enforcement. But I think if you're gonna put the signs, that you should put the cost factor with it.
I think you almost have to, I think.
And you're only talking on that side of the road, in front of Dunkin' Donuts. The other side, you'll let them park,
Right.
let them pull up there and park. I think it's a safety issue myself.
Sure.
Fighting to get in and out of there is just a nightmare.
Jeff, do you have any areas that you have major concerns with?
Well,
that
you know-
might need signs?
Dunkin' Donuts is obviously one of them, but, you know, when you park a large vehicle in front of any entrance, it's hard to get out. But, you know, the other place of issue might be the high school, let's for say, during large events. You know, there are one or two loading zones still left around town, like the end of Madison Avenue. The end of Madison Avenue where Christopher's used to be, that's still a loading zone. You know, there are a few places around town that, you know, that could be enforced. The other issue would be on Main Street, you know, we've changed that, it used to be 8 to 5, now it's 8 to 8.
I know I've heard feedback in a business in town, that right there on Main Street, right between the barber shop and Madison 1, there seems to be some people that has business at 1 Madison Ave that have a tendency to park their vehicle for 2 and 3 and sometimes 4 hours in front of these businesses instead of parking up on the side street or wherever the parking area is. And it's kind of agitating a businessman or two in that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that might be something that should be a little bit of attention drawn to. You know, like some of them that have this problem, they could have a size, business customers only or something like that.
Yeah, you don't wanna be going too crazy on signs.
No.
But I think signs that are referencing a municipal ordinance is what the sheriff needs for enforcement. So it looks like as we progress toward these changes, once the ordinances get approved and are in place, then the next step is working with the sheriff and the road commissioner on signage. And making sure the signs go in the right places and coming back to the board and identifying these places where we want these signs, letting the board set the fee, set the fine, whatever you want that fine to be. And then the sheriff's office will have something to enforce. Most of the work here in these changes is really removing references and removing parking violations where there don't need to be parking violations anymore, and just kind of clarifying things. I think that Dunkin' Donuts reference was the only change that was added as a no parking. Everything else, if you go to the second page, everything else is pretty much straightforward. In some cases, like handicap parking, those are governed by state laws. We could put signs out there that say what the state fine is and have the sheriff enforce those. We have lots of references to taxi stands. I don't believe we need to have those anymore. The distances from fire hydrants and driveways, our references here are outdated. The new state laws are more strict, so I would say just update to the current state laws. And then the stop signs. The road commissioner recommends removing a couple and adding a couple. Trolley Line Drive, Nichols Street, Folsom, or Hartford and Maxim.
No stop sign coming off of Nichols Street.
Right?
No stop sign coming off of Nichols Street.
Well, it's changed, it's.
When we say add Nichols, it used to say in the ordinance Folsom.
Oh, okay.
Folsom and Dinsmore.
Okay, okay.
The trolley line's a new road that's been added since the ordinance
Yeah.
last was updated.
Yeah, I understood that one. I forgot all about Nichols being Folsom.
Yeah.
So if you come up back with something penalty-wise,
Yep.
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. All right, selectmen's concerns, Mr. Moody,
None, sir.
Mr. Elias,
Nothing for me, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Savage, you, Sean? None for me, citizens' concerns. Seeing none, we'll look for, is Evan here?
It's right there in the hallway.
All right, looking for a motion to go into executive session to discuss economic development pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056C.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to go into executive session to discuss economic development pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056C. All in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. We're in executive session at 7:36.